Hello, I'm Waqar Rizvi, and this is Scope. We will remove every single infiltrator from the country. That statement by the president of India's ruling party has resulted in anger. His explanation of it clarified even further that he meant to directly target India's Muslim population. In an election season, what do such statements mean for India and its Muslim citizens in part? Let's discuss that a bit further, as well as India's elections in general. We're now joined by Dr. Priya Virmani, who is a political commentator. She's joining us now. We're also joined by Mr. Rifat Jawaid, who is a former BBC editor and founder of Janata Ka Reporter. That's a news website. And we're also joined by Mr. Saurabh Kumar, who is visiting faculty at the Institute of International Relations at the University of Warsaw. He's joining us from New Delhi. Rifat, Saurabh, and Priya, thank you all for joining us. Priya, I'll start with you. What do you make of statements such as the one that I read out there in my introduction, as well as how these elections have gone so far?
I'll begin with the ground view here in India. I'm in New Delhi at the moment, and we've just seen the phase one of the Indian elections that began on Thursday conclude. This looks at 91 seats for parliament seats spread across 18 states and 2 union territories, mainly around northeastern India and the eastern part of India, with a couple of southern states like Andhra Pradesh. We also have Jammu and Kashmir, very, very pivotal here, very seminal. And the results out from the Election Commission of India, the initial picture is that we've had about the same number of voter turnout that we had in 2014, but they are hopeful that this voter turnout will pick up in time to come. Now, this election will see 50 million new voters voting for the very first time. And I don't think as of yet anybody really has their ear to the ground to really know the pulse of these new first-time voters and know which way they are going to vote.
Priya, because I know time is short, I do apologize for cutting you off. I just wanted to get your thoughts before I let you go, Priya, about what you make of the rhetoric in the lead up to these elections and even during this election, because obviously there are many phases to India's elections.
Well, what we see is, there is the politics of personality and it's whipped up to be very incendiary as compared to being more developmental and being more about the real issues on the ground and being one that would de-escalate such tensions and look more at the issues of, education, our roads, our infrastructure, more fundamental issues. So I do feel it is up to now the judgment and the end of the Indian voter to decipher between what is whipped up rhetoric, where mileage is trying to be created, and who and where they would like to cast their vote.
Very well, Priya, we appreciate your time, of course. Let me now go to Saurabh. You heard there from Priya, and I wanted to get your thoughts about, of course, Amit Shah's statement, A, and then B, about how you feel this first phase has gone so far.
See, the logic would say that the primary issue should be the issue of unemployment, and more than unemployment, we are facing a situation of job loss, which is a step which is the next step of unemployment. Or logic would say that people would be discussing the issue of education, infrastructure. But what has happened till now is that while the opposition has time and again raised the issue of unemployment, it has also raised the issue of the situation of education and where India is going generally. From the very beginning, what BJP has been targeting at, it realized that it does not have much to say on the issue of development. So from the very beginning, they shifted their rhetoric towards the religious divide. They have been trying to sort of bring issue of religious divide as well as Pakistan in the conversation. And if you listen to most of the speeches of the leaders there, while some developmental issues are mentioned in the side, the primary focus has remained on the issue of, they cannot directly say a lot of things because it is illegal. So there is this whole, the way they use the dog whistle to to sort of give a nod to their voter population. So this is what has been till now, and I think this will persist. And if I mean there are internal surveys done by all the parties, and if as new phases of the voting comes, and the party realizes that it is losing some ground, it will probably shift more towards that rhetoric than talking about job and other issues.
Okay, so let me bring in Rifat. Rifat, do you think then this divisive talk, such as Amit Shah's statement about removing infiltrators from the country, etc., do you think that sort of divisive talk will succeed?
Well, there are two things here, Waqar, about Amit Shah's statement. He didn't just say that his government will remove infiltrators. He said his government will remove Muslim infiltrators, because he categorically said that the infiltrators that his government is planning to remove are not Sikh or Buddhist or Hindus. So essentially what he meant was Muslim. Why they are doing it? I mean, you have to understand that Modi rose to power in 2014 based on plenty of promises, and he has spectacularly failed on all those promises. So now 5 years later, when his president is going to take place, clearly he knows he doesn't have tangible thing to talk about. Coupled with that, there are a lot of allegations of scam and corruptions, including Rafale deal. As we speak, there have been more revelations in the Rafale deal, which is causing increasingly sort of embarrassment to him and to his government. So clearly, in order to divert that attention, he has gone the core ideology of the BJP, which is Hindutva and nationalism. Now, I mean, do they mean, are they serious about nationalism? No. But clearly, if it helps them get force, they will whip up these sentiments. But whether it's too late for them, only time will tell. But early reports that we are receiving, based on the first phase of elections, clearly, it's not looking very good for them.
Okay, so do you think, Saurabh, that this will be possibly a failing policy on the BJP's part, or do you think that, as in with many other countries around the world, as you well know, Saurabh, as well, that a lot of countries are moving ever more right-wing, and those populist sort of leaders are actually succeeding into coming in power? Will Modi remain in power, do you think?
Well, I am a bit pessimistic about this entire thing. You see, the kind of economic performance which this government has produced, this would have meant a complete washover. I mean, they would not have won 50 seats. But nobody in his right mind would say that they are in such a bad situation. That itself is a very unfortunate thing, where somebody which has performed a lot, not at all on any of the important agendas, is still looking forward to coming back in power. That itself is a very unfortunate incident. Second thing which I want to point out here is that there is something called buyer's remorse. You are very aware of this term, buyer's remorse. So last time, a large, substantial portion of Indians had put so much faith in Modi that quite a large part of that population who voted for Modi are still not. I mean, they think that questioning Modi now would be questioning their own choice, their own decision. So this buyer's remorse, I find it at a lot of places, especially among the upper caste Hindus, but also to the upper OBCs and other caste. That is why I'm not very optimistic that they are going to be thrashed completely. At this point, I still believe that they might become the single largest party again. Whether they will be able to form the government or not is a different matter.
Okay, so Rifat, then let's directly, then, if we can, because you brought up the Muslims, obviously, in India, and I'm wondering then, where does this leave Muslims going forward in Indian society? They obviously make up a very important part of it, as do other such minorities. What does this mean for Indian Muslims?
Look, I mean, it's not a very soothing sign for Muslims. As somebody who himself is a Muslim, I relate a lot to what is happening. What is a major cause of concern for Muslims in India is that the institutions which were there to safeguard their interest are also not functioning in a manner they ought to be working. For an example, seeking votes by invoking religion or by provoking religious sentiments is against, is in contravention of the model code of conduct under the election, by the Election Commission. But Election Commission has chosen to turn the other, look the other way, which is what is, sending a chill, down, I mean, really frightening the Muslims, that if Election Commission, which is essentially is running the government right now, ever since the model code of conduct kicked in, there is no elected government, it's Election Commission. But Election Commission's role has been very, very questionable. You have seen the reports of as many as more than 150 former army officers. They have written to the President of India, and that include 8 former service chiefs. And they are expressing their grave concern that, Modi and his party leaders are using the Indian armed forces to provoke a large group of people belonging to a particular faith in order to come back to power. Now, they might succeed, they might not succeed, but the concern is that it will damage the Indian society to an extent which will become irreparable.
And Saurabh, then I wonder what you make of that. Why is there this anti-Muslim sentiment being played up, A, and B, will it succeed, and what does that then mean for Indian society?
It has already succeeded. I mean, why do you think Modi came to power? What was his achievement before coming to power? I mean, his only claim to fame was that it was under his watch that almost 2,000 Muslims were massacred in Gujarat. That's his claim to fame. I mean, anybody telling you that, I mean, especially the upper caste Indians, if they're telling you that they voted for Modi for anything else, then they are not telling truth. That was the primary attraction which brought him to the power. Of course, there were other issues. I mean, there were this disenchantment against Congress and other issues, but that remains his primary USP. This thing has further deteriorated in the last 5 years. As Rifat was suggesting, the institutions have slowly started to crumble. These institutions, which we were so proud of since the last 70 years, these institutions have started to crumble at the mere push of the right-wing onslaught. And I think if the government comes back to power, it will further deteriorate, it will further erode the credibility of the institutions and the situation for Muslims and other minorities. I mean, please remember that in Mr. Amit Shah's comment, he didn't mention Christian also. So basically, it is not just against Muslim, also against the Christians, because you also find a very sustained propaganda against the Christian community in India. So it will be very, very gloomy for these two communities, as well as the other parts of Hindu society, like Dalits and other groups.
Okay, so Rifat, then what is it that the opposition possibly then, if we may argue it this way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, what is it that the opposition Congress may be getting wrong? Or do you think that there is in fact a chance for the Congress to win, and will it do better for the country on those issues which actually matter for Indians?
You see, I mean, the Congress was also accused of embarking on what is called soft Hindutva, because perhaps this detected, an opportunity to kind of have the electoral successes. So therefore, they embarked on. But I think, Congress is still a better option than the BJP. I think, there are, even if BJP were to come to power, and if it doesn't emerge, it fails to secure the majority. That is still a good news for India, because then, with a fractured mandate and BJP not kind of getting the majority on its own, I don't think many of the coalition partners would agree to Modi as the Prime Minister. So, what people are really concerned about is that, Modi and Shah should not be at the helm of affairs. As long as these two are not, because the BJP has ruled the country in the past also, and that too at the time when, equally, sort of hardline personality like L.K. Advani, he used to be the deputy prime minister, and yet, there was, as long as they ruled the government, by and large, they felt okay. Okay, there was the Gujarat riots where 2,000 people were killed, but you had Atal Bihari Vajpayee publicly condemning that act. So as long as Modi and Shah are not at the helm of affairs, I think, generally there is a concern, there is a unanimity that it'll be okay. We'll come to know on 23rd of May. But,
Indeed.
you know, not just Shah. If you look at I'll just conclude it. If you look at the election campaign, there have been several leaders, including Maneka Gandhi, who is a union minister yesterday. She was publicly threatening the voters, saying that addressing the Muslims, she said, if you don't vote for me, I am going to win. And once I win, forget it. I'm not going to work for you guys. So that's a public threat. And that's also a violation of election code of conduct. And election commission has been, you know, a mute spectator, which is not a really good news.
But Saurabh, I'm going to give you the final word. We've got a minute. Do you think a Congress has a chance here? Will it be better at governing India on those issues which really matter?
See, as a pure electoral tactic, Congress has also quoted soft Hindutva to sort of counter BJP. But essentially, the party remains secular in its outlook. I won't say that it is very, very progressive, but compared to what we have in the power now, its core outlook has always remained secular. So while it might resort to electoral tactic of soft Hindutva, it might come back to a more progressive approach when it is in power. That is my expectation, but one can never say anything for sure.
Indeed. Well, we appreciate both of your times, your insight and analysis. Of course, that was Kumar Shahi, who is a visiting faculty member at the Institute of International Relations at the University of Warsaw. He was speaking to us from New Delhi. We were also joined by Mr. Rifat Jawaid, who is former BBC editor and is the founder of the Indian news website Jantaka Reporter. He was speaking to us from New Delhi as well. Now, viewers, as our guests there, including Priya, spoke about, there are some issues which essentially are global, really, aren't they, when it comes to voters and how they vote and what are important to them, be it education, healthcare, or infrastructure. And that is no different in India. But the BJP, the ruling party, has been trying to play up on this religious divide, as I quoted that statement at the beginning of the segment about removing essentially Muslim/Christian infiltrators, possibly, as well as Saurabh there mentioned. That is BJP's president who said that. So that's obviously concerning, that the BJP, if it does come back to power, would come back on a platform which is so divisive for such a large portion of Indian population. Muslims do make up a significant portion of India's population. We'll keep a very close eye on the rhetoric and irregularities going forward in the next phases of this Indian election. Stay with us. I'll be back after a short break with our next segment. Welcome back, viewers. We're still here in Scope. Now, Pakistan is hosting Sikh pilgrims from India. They are in the country to celebrate the new harvest season and their new year. This is at a time that Pakistani officials have also called on both sides to complete the Kartarpur corridor to facilitate the easy travels for pilgrims to their sacred places. To discuss this a bit further, we're joined up by Mr. Sarbjit Singh Gill, pardon me. He's a Sikh pilgrim who is in Nankana Sahib. He is visiting from Canada, but his family is originally from an area close to Kartarpur. Sarbjit, how important, of course, is the fact that you've been able to come to these sacred places on this pilgrimage?
Praying to God that we should be given some corridor to see Nankana Sahib. We have been living close to Pakistan border, about 4 kilometers from Dera Baba Nanak, and we always been to the Dera Baba Nanak border to see through the telescope to see the Kartarpur border, Kartarpur Gurdwara. And we were emotionally attached, and we were praying every day, every morning. I have been praying. My parents have been praying so that we can get a corridor. It's not that big deal for the governments. They could give us a lot before that, long before than that. But whatever we got now, we are very happy. I'm very much excited about it.
And Sarbjit, then I'm going to stick with you and ask you, do you hope that these sorts of measures will also bring in more peace in this region?
Definitely, 100%. And I'm sure that the initiatives from the Pakistan and Indian governments both are very appreciable. And this will make us very easy going to and bow before Guru and perform our religious customs. And I'm really thankful to both of the governments.
I just wanted to ask you if you're hoping that this an era of peace will be ushered in this region.
Yes, I'm very sure that it will ease up a lot of Sikh Sangat from all over the world. especially when we are arriving up back home in Punjab, and then there is always a wish in everybody's mind that we could see Guru Nanak Kartar Sahib Gurdwara. And I'm 100% sure that they will everybody from the Punjab area and especially in our area, they will always go and see Gurdwara through the corridor.
Okay, and Sarbjit, you've come from very far, of course, all the way from Canada itself, as you well said. So I wonder, from the outside looking in, what is the Sikh community in Canada and places around the world? What are their thoughts on initiatives like Kartarpur? And going forward, do you think that will make it easier for you to be able to visit your sacred places easily?
Exactly. In Canada, everybody, I am in GTA area, right? And there are many Sikhs, more than any other area of the world, actually, I would say. Then we have been discussing and we have been expecting long ago that it will happen. And this time when it was announced, it was like, I won't go into political measures, but the thing is that the wish has come true. Every Gursikh, even if that Gursikh would not be able to go there because they are not originally from India, but even they are from outside, they are thankful and they are very much excited about it, because this wish was like the one thing that could be done very easily by each government, every government, that they understand the emotions and all those religious rights by the Sikhism. Sikh people, and that means that everybody is thankful to this act of kindness by both of the government, and they have done very good work, right? And I am really especially thankful to the Pakistani government that they have taken quick action, and the lot of work is going on. I had been there. I looked at the work they are doing. It is really really great work that they are trying to complete it before the Gurpurab in November, right? So that way, whenever we hear, and especially in this Baisakhi, I have come here to see that I arrived directly from Toronto to Lahore, so that I can go there and see how the work is going on, and I am very much satisfied. Same thing that other people have told me before in last year and in January, some people have told me,
right.
And that is very true. Okay. And I will go and say the same thing, that
right.
I'm thankful to Pakistani government for doing that great work, and thankful to Indian government for getting that
very well said, Sarbjit. All right, we're going to leave it there at that as our final word, but of course we'd like to wish all Sikhs around the world a happy new year, of course, as they're celebrating their new year at this time. We had there Mr. Sarbjit Singh Gill, who's a Sikh pilgrim. His family is originally also close from an area that is close to Kartarpur, I should say. He was in Nankana Sahib, speaking to us there via Skype. Now, viewers, as our guests spoke about, this initiative on the part of Sikhs is one that they appreciate, of course, to be able to visit their sacred places. 2,200 visas, as I said, have been issued by the Pakistani government to Sikhs from around the world, as you can tell, as Mr. Sarbjit is visiting, I should say, from Canada itself, but is originally from, of course, as I said, close to Kartarpur. Obviously, the Kartarpur corridor itself is still being worked on, still being finalized. Pakistan has called for that to be completed as soon as possible, and is encouraging for that then to facilitate travel to these sacred places here in Pakistan. We'll keep a close eye on that and how all of that develops, and the visit, of course, of these Sikh pilgrims to Pakistan here in scope. I'll be back, though, after a short break with our next segment. Stay tuned. Viewers, thank you for staying with us here in scope. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party has admitted to placing hidden cameras in polling booths, mostly used by Arabs. The PR agency behind this move is run by settlers who have celebrated that they were able to discourage a significant amount of Arabs, apparently, from voting. With Netanyahu's win, the Arab voice is set to be even more suppressed. To discuss that further, we're joined now by Mr. Gideon Levy, who is a journalist. He is joining us now from Tel Aviv. Gideon, as always, we appreciate your time. What do you make of these hidden cameras? The Election Commission, of course, saying that these are illegal.
Just imagine yourself if the same measure would have been taken by a European politician, European prime minister in Jewish communities. Imagine yourself that he would aim it only at Jewish communities anywhere. It would have become an international scandal. But in Israel of Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli-Palestinian citizens are worth nothing, and equality has nothing to do with their rights, and therefore he can allow himself and his party can allow themselves to do things which are on the border of criminal, by the way.
So then I wonder, Gideon, what does this mean then going forward? Because, we've had this anti-Arab sentiment growing, haven't we? Especially very publicly, I mean. And it seems like it's acceptable now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the main problems, because, racism and nationalism exist everywhere. But very few countries, nationalism and racism becomes politically correct and comes from the top of the top. Doesn't come from lower strata, from some popular emotions and sentiments, but comes directly from the Prime Minister office. This is very, very dangerous to the relationship between citizens, because we are dealing, I must remind you viewers, that we are not dealing with the Palestinians under the occupation. We are dealing with the Israeli citizens who happen to be Palestinians, 20% of our population in sovereign Israel. And if they are excluded as they are in the political game, it shows a lot about Israel's democracy.
And then, I'm glad you brought up the Palestinians who are occupation themselves too, because this then is a sign to them as well, isn't it? Then, Gideon, in some ways, about whatever form of this deal of the century may take, or any peace process in the future.
Unfortunately, they don't need any signs. They just open the window and they see a brutal Israeli soldiers at the entrance of their home day and night. They don't need any signs from their brothers who live as citizens of the state of Israel. The brutality of their occupation has nothing to do and is not comparable to the relatively freedom that their brothers, the people of Israel, the citizens of Israel gain. And therefore, unfortunately so, they have enough signs to know how far they are from independence, from self-determination, from freedom.
And then let's talk about the peace process and how Netanyahu has spoken of these sorts of things. The previous elections, he had warned about the Arabs coming to vote. In these elections, he's spoken about annexing at least parts of the West Bank, I believe. We've already had the Trump decision on the Golan Heights, for example. What do you make of all of that? It just seems like the slippery slope, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems so. And as long as Donald Trump will be the president of the United States, Benjamin Netanyahu will feel free, and rightly so, to go in this way, because the only obstacle throughout the years was the international community. Annexation, I mean, the right-wingers in Israel would love to annexate the occupied territories a long time ago. They were only scared from the reaction of the international community. Once the international community is led by Donald Trump, who recognized already the occupation in the Golan Heights, then everything, the game changes, and we can find ourselves very soon with an annexated West Bank, with all the results out of it and all the consequences, because this will have dramatic consequences. Because if Israel will annexate the occupied territories, then comes really the question, do the people get their equal rights, yes or no? If they get equal rights, fantastic, but no right-winger in Israel intends to give them equal rights. If the answer is no, then we can declare officially that Israel is an apartheid state.
Right, and then I imagine that those like you, Gideon, and others, of course, must be worried looking at the way that Israeli society is going then, because there has been talk now, hasn't there, about why would Israeli society as a whole support such extreme right-wing positions?
Yes and no. By annexation, you also put the end of the masquerade, because the occupation is already over 50 years old with any intention to put an end to it. So maybe annexation will remind the world and remind some Israelis that this is not a temporary phenomena, that the occupation is there to stay, and maybe this apathy and indifference will come to its end. I don't know, because right now to continue with this so-called temporary situation, while nobody has the intention to put an end to it, is the worst. Because meanwhile, Israel is strengthening the occupation and building more settlements, and by the end of the day, we are reaching an irreversible reality.
And so then that question comes up, Gideon, about why the other side, why the opposition, be it Benny Gantz or whoever we want to talk about, why haven't they been able to show a viable alternative to this, which would be acceptable to the Israeli people?
Because by the end of the day, when it comes to the Israeli occupation, there is no real difference between Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz, between the right-wingers and the so-called center-left parties. By the end of the day, none of them really wants to put an end to the occupation, and that's the sad truth.
Okay, so then talking about, let's go back to the annexation portion of this discussion, Gideon, because I wonder, what exactly are these politicians proposing then? If they were to annex the West Bank as well, what happens next? Are they saying that then a one-state solution is acceptable to them? Is that something that the Israeli voter understands, that that's what this is all going towards?
By all means not. Israel is trying to have it all, to annexate, but not to give civil rights to the population, the non-Jewish, the Palestinian population under the annexation. So Israel is trying really to eat the cake and to keep it complete. This is obviously impossible, and this will be the role of the international community to come and say, okay, you annexated. You intend to keep those territories forever. You intend to keep the settlements forever. Is your intention to keep the Palestinian population, 4 million people in Gaza and West Bank, without any civil rights forever? Is this your plan? Because if this is your plan, you declare the apartheid state officially, legally, and formally.
Yeah, and that statement that Netanyahu made recently, the one about this state being basically just for Jews, and of course I'm paraphrasing that, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was along those lines, and I remember then a lot of American Jews reacted to that, even I believe American Jewish associations reacted to that, who would normally, of course, are very pro-Israel. Do you think that now there is that very clear divide, Gideon, which I know has been growing for a number of years now, between American Jews, who mostly support Israel or have supported Israel, and what's happening in Israel itself?
No, we are just in the beginning of a process, which might be a very hopeful process, but we are just in the beginning, because by the end of the day, the Jewish establishment is still with Netanyahu and is still supporting Israel blindly and automatically, no matter what. There are some cracks in this, maybe the first time ever since the State of Israel was established, and this is very encouraging, but we are still in the beginning of a long road, because when it comes to a moment of truth, they will always continue to support Israel, no matter what. And until a new generation will come up who will feel less committed to automatical and blind support to Israel, until this new generation will emerge, we will still see a very powerful pro-Israeli lobby in Washington.
And then, there's obviously, going back to the international community, we have the Europeans, I believe, who also spoke about it, Golan Heights, and others who condemned that move by the United States. But then, this doesn't move beyond condemnation, does it? Do you think that Israel will at some point in time, or Netanyahu more specifically, if I may say, will push the wrong buttons, and at some point even allies will react in some more substantive way?
Look, after 52 years of occupation, part of them very brutal, no member of the international community, I mean the EU or the United States or the United Nations or some other international institution, really took measures against Israel. It was always about lip service. It was always about condemnation, which Israel can live with. And it was never sanctions. You know, Russia, the big Russia, invaded Crimea, and within weeks, it was exposed to sanctions by the EU. And here you face an occupation of so many years, and no practical measure was taken. And as long as those measures will not be taken, Israel will not change its policy, no way.
Look, we're going to add another voice to this conversation, joined by a political analyst, Aboud Hamayel, who is joining us now on the line. Aboud, we appreciate you taking your time out. I know you have a busy schedule and are traveling, Aboud, but I wanted to get your thoughts, Aboud, on these elections and, of course, these hidden cameras in those polling booths, which apparently discouraged some Arabs from voting. What do you make of all that, Aboud?
Well, I think like the video cameras that Netanyahu and his party Likud has placed or attempted to place in many of the Arab polling stations was a blatant attempt to not only discourage Arab votes from coming, but also as a sign, as a signal and a message to the Palestinian society and Palestinian citizens of Israel that they are second-class citizens within this state, that they should remain so, and they should not be treated as equal citizens under the law as much as they desire that. But also, I think it's important to differentiate between the percentage of Arab votes that actually went to vote, because I think there was an active boycott campaign from Palestinians, the citizens of Israel, that are fed up with the Knesset and fed up with their members of Knesset and fed up with this whole politics of engaging with the Israeli political system that has not given them rights, that discriminates on legal and cultural and political levels against them. So this was not only like, I don't think the cameras are the only reason for the low turnout among Arab voters.
Aboud, what do you make of that boycott? Because I wanted to bring that up with you, in fact. Do you think that that is a counterproductive measure, or do you think that that was something that should have happened?
Well, it's a conversation that a lot of Palestinians are having as to what extent they want to engage with the political system that Israel has in place. Because as you know, most political or Zionist political parties refuse to engage with the Arab parties. They will not form coalitions with them. They don't get part of the budgets that should be allocated to them. There's a lot of house demolishments happening in Arab villages. In terms of planning and zoning, the Arabs don't get what the Jewish neighborhoods or Jewish cities get. So there's a lot of various forms of structural discrimination that are happening legally. And for 60 years, the Palestinians have engaged in the Knesset, Palestinian citizens of Israel, but they have not really got any rewards for that engagement. And the last elections, they participated in a coalition among all Arab parties, but also that did not bring them, they were the third biggest party in the Knesset, but also that did not actually incur any benefit for the Arab citizens of Israel. So I think it reached a point where the conversation has become is like, why should we engage? Why is our vote important? And a lot of Palestinians are saying that this is the moment that we say that we should not acknowledge the sovereignty of Israel over us as also citizens of this state, because this state does not treat us equally. And of course, I don't want to...
Yeah, no, I wanted to get Gideon's reaction to that, Gideon, because I wanted to get your thoughts about this boycott, which I'd forgotten to bring up with you earlier, Gideon. Do you think that that was something that naturally would have happened at some point in time? And then that is sort of a dangerous precedent, isn't it? As Aboud there said, if the Arabs, be they within the occupied territories or, as you said, be they citizens of Israel, if they start boycotting and not engaging, that's also dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, it is dangerous. And as much as I am in favor of boycotting the settlements and boycotting Israel from the outside, I'm opposing boycotting the elections by the Palestinian community, because I think this, as you say, rightly so, is a very dangerous game. I totally understand their frustration. I totally understand the motivation not to go to vote, because finally you find yourself, even if you vote, as a second-class citizen, and you are excluded from the game. But on the other hand, that's the tool you have in your hands, and you shouldn't miss it. Because there are many Israelis who would love to see a Jewish parliament without any Palestinian representative. We shouldn't play to their hands. And I wish more Israeli Palestinians would have come to the ballots and vote. And the stronger they are, hand to hand with other elements in the Jewish community, obviously, the stronger we will be together, the more chances are to change policies and change the way that Israel is pathing.
Okay, so Aboud, I wonder then, what is the feeling then in Ramallah where you are about these elections and how they've gone, of course, from the Arab Palestinian point of view?
Well, I think there's various different point of views that are happening. I think for the Palestinian political leadership, they view this elections as basically the continuation of Netanyahu's policy of non-engagement and non-negotiation with the Palestinian leadership. I think on the Palestinian street, they see nothing new happening. I mean, there's a lot of worrying signs about the claims of Netanyahu that he wants to go with the annexation of parts of the West Bank or huge parts of the West Bank. We don't know yet what is his plan for the annexation of the West Bank. So there's not a lot of new, there's nothing really new in terms of the elections and their outcome. Israel is basically choosing between a right wing and more right wing. And this is basically, seeping into the Palestinian society that the horizon for negotiation or political settlement based on two-state solution is basically has ended. And now we're in the aftermath of thinking about what is next.
Okay, then, so Aboud, I wonder, do you think that then means, and I'm going to put you on the spot about internal Palestinian politics, if I may, do you think that this means then that support for an organization like Hamas would then grow?
I think that I don't think support for Hamas per se as a political party might grow, but I think at least support for the stances that Hamas is making in terms of, armed resistance and various forms of engagement with the Israeli with the other side, because I think once the negotiation horizon is closed with the Trump administration, with Netanyahu's policy, there's very few limited options for the Palestinians in the West Bank to pursue, and among them is popular resistance and other forms of resistance that might bring back Palestine on the table and might bring back the issue and the cause of Palestine to be one that has to be tackled with and engaged with.
Gideon, we just have about a minute left, so I wanted to get your final thoughts. That's dangerous, isn't it? That if, from Israel's government's point of view, that if more Palestinians were to then support the likes of Hamas, that only really means one thing, and that means confrontation, doesn't it?
Not necessarily so. It depends much on Israel. I mean, I believe that even Hamas can be a partner and should be treated as a possible partner, as you see in Gaza. I mean, Hamas is the darling of Netanyahu. Netanyahu does everything possible to dismantle the PA and Mahmoud Abbas, and does anything possible to assist Hamas in Gaza, not directly, not officially, but under the surface. I think that Hamas could have become also a partner for everything, and it's about the Palestinians to choose their leadership, but Israel could speak with anyone if Israel had a real, genuine intention to put an end to the occupation, which it lacks, obviously.
Very well. We'll leave that as our final word, but of course we appreciate your time, your insight and analysis. That was Mr. Gideon Levy, journalist. He was speaking to us from Tel Aviv. We were also joined by Aboud Hamayel, who is an associate professor and political analyst. He was speaking to us there from Ramallah on the line. Now, viewers, as both of our guests spoke about, we started off, of course, our discussion about those hidden cameras in some Arab polling booths for these Israeli elections. Those were meant to discourage the Arab vote. Then there was obviously, as Aboud had brought up, the issue of the Arab boycott itself, the frustration on the part of Arab citizens, quote unquote, of Israel, and them not voting because they feel frustrated about the situation in the Knesset and in Israel as well. Then there's the threat, of course, of Netanyahu that he may annex parts of the West Bank. That's pretty much the platform that he came in on, seemingly, when it comes to the Palestinian issue. And the fact that the Palestinian issue itself wasn't actually one of the main topics of discussion when it came to these Israeli elections, and that in and of itself, many commentators have said, is a worrying sign to begin with. We'll keep a close eye on how these elections play out in the coming days, what this means for the Palestinians and any peace in this region as well here in Scope. I'll leave it there for now, though. I've been Waqar Rizvi. Thanks for watching.